Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Sally's moral quandary, Moriah's confession, and Jack's counsel. To confess, Moriah Copeland. Will it be the whole truth, though? In the meantime, Courtney Hope's character Sally Spectra is faced with a moral conundrum. Let's discuss the upcoming events in the CBS soap opera as you continue reading. First, let's discuss the most intriguing spoiler. Moriah and her secret end up being at the center of it. She is said to be going to confess at last. But confessing and being completely honest can be two different things. I'm curious to see what Moriah will confess to and whether it will also provide viewers with some answers. Does Moriah pose a threat to her family, or was she triggered by the old guy? She'll have to deal with a moral conundrum with Sally. If Sally begins to question Billy Abbott's choices, she does have the power to take over Abbott Communications. Billy is already causing the redhead anxiety. That will get more intense when she arrives at an empty party and drops a bombshell with Billy Flynn's character, Kane Ashby. Jack Abbott may be able to provide Sally some guidance. Sally might be the source of the enigmatic message Jack receives later this week. Claire Grace Newman receives a bombshell from Victor Newman. Victor appeared to be standing up for Kyle Abbott, but in reality, he was making matters worse. In order to get Claire to ask her lover more questions, he made hints regarding that covert agreement. Victor is competent, I'll grant him that much. Regarding AUDRA Charles, she and Holden Novak trade threats. Given that Holden is very certain he will simply carry on with his life, it appears that AUDRA is the real culprit. PHYLLIS Summers is cautioned by Nick Newman. Later on, Nick tells Sharon Newman a secret. Victor settles unresolved business with Michael Baldwin by Friday. Kane, meanwhile, forms a new coalition. And in the end, PHYLLIS takes charge. I'm not sure whether it's a good or terrible thing that PHYLLIS is taking charge. Keep an eye on her since things can swiftly spiral out of control. Sally's moral quandary, Moriah's confession, and Jack's counsel all converge in a tangled web of loyalties, secrets, and fragile trust that seems to stretch every relationship in Genoa City to its breaking point. And as the week unfolds, each revelation pushes the characters deeper into choices that will define not only their futures but also their place within the powerful families and ruthless industries they inhabit. Beginning first with Moriah Copeland, who has carried the weight of a truth that gnawed at her ever since her encounters with the mysterious older man, portrayed by Michael Swan, left her rattled to her core, and while she has put on a brave face for Tessa, for her family, and even for Sharon, she can no longer endure the burden of half-truths and buried memories clawing at her sanity, so she decides at last to come forward with a confession, though the audience is left to wonder whether what Moriah is about to reveal constitutes the full truth or merely a carefully measured version of it that spares her the harshest judgment. And in soap fashion, even the act of confession becomes a dramatic cliffhanger, because honesty is a spectrum in Genoa City, and when Moriah begins to speak, the tremble in her voice, the glint of fear in her eyes, and the hesitation between her words suggest that although she is unburdening herself, she is also holding something back, which immediately creates ripples of doubt. Does she pose a threat to her family? Is she hiding the depth of what happened, or is she, in fact, protecting someone else entirely? And this puzzle draws Sharon into a maternal storm of worry while simultaneously sparking questions from those around her who wonder if this disclosure will finally give closure to years of lingering suspicions or instead open a new chapter of mistrust. But Moriah's storyline does not exist in isolation, because paralleling her turmoil is Sally Spectra, who finds herself locked in a moral quandary that speaks to her ambition, her survival instincts, and her complicated feelings for Billy Abbott, since Sally, once an outsider constantly fighting for legitimacy in Genoa City, has clawed her way into Abbott Communications with skill and boldness. Yet now, as Billy's erratic leadership choices threaten not only the company's stability but also her own professional reputation, she is faced with a fork in the road: remain loyal to Billy despite his spiraling decisions, or take advantage of his missteps to position herself as the de facto leader, effectively seizing control of Abbott Communications. A temptation that grows stronger when Sally attends what was supposed to be a celebratory party only to find it empty, eerily quiet, and then explosive in drama when Kane Ashby appears and delivers a bombshell that rattles her view of both Billy and the broader Abbott empire. And it is in this vulnerable, volatile moment that Jack Abbott steps into the picture, serving once again as the voice of reason, the sage counselor who understands both the weight of legacy and the allure of ambition, offering Sally a kind of mentorship that could either stabilize her or embolden her depending on how she interprets his guidance, because Jack, while sympathetic, knows that one wrong move in the corporate arena could cost the family everything. And when an enigmatic message later arrives on Jack's phone, fans are left speculating whether Sally is the hidden sender, manipulating Jack into nudging her toward the power she craves, or whether another hand is at play entirely. And as this tension simmers, elsewhere in Genoa City, Claire Grace Newman finds herself the recipient of a bombshell courtesy of her grandfather Victor, who masterfully plays his favorite game of controlled manipulation by making it seem as though he is protecting Kyle Abbott, when in reality he is sowing seeds of doubt, whispering just enough about a covert agreement to push Claire into questioning her lover more aggressively, a move that underscores Victor's brilliance at weaponizing information and half-truths, for he knows that Claire's trust in Kyle is both her strength and her weakness, and by nudging her suspicions, he ensures that Kyle's footing grows shakier just as he attempts to secure his place in both the Newman and Abbott spheres. But Victor's maneuvering does not stop there, because in the same breath that he destabilizes Claire, he sets the stage for AUDRA Charles and Holden Novak's clash. A heated exchange of threats where AUDRA's razor-sharp cunning is matched by Holden's defiant confidence, and while Holden seems assured that he can glide past the storm unscathed, it becomes increasingly evident that AUDRA may be the true architect of chaos, pulling strings with cold calculation, and this volatile dynamic between them feeds back into the broader question of who is truly in control of Genoa City's next power shift. Meanwhile, Phyllis Summers continues her unpredictable streak, driven by impulses that oscillate between brilliance and self-destruction, and when Nick Newman cautions her, it is not merely out of brotherly concern but out of genuine fear that Phyllis, in her relentless pursuit of control, will cross yet another line she cannot uncross. Yet even as Nick delivers his warning, he confides a separate secret to Sharon, a disclosure that complicates their already layered bond, reminding longtime viewers of their deep history and shared vulnerabilities, and all the while, Victor ensures that no loose ends remain unattended, closing unresolved business with Michael Baldwin by week's end, though the nature of their deal hints at long-brewing issues finally reaching resolution. And parallel to this, Kane Ashby begins forging a new coalition, a bold step that could reconfigure alliances in unexpected ways, challenging both Billy's authority and Sally's ethical tightrope walk, and finally, in a climax that embodies the very essence of soap unpredictability, Phyllis seizes control, though whether her brand of leadership will bring clarity or chaos remains the central question. Because Phyllis in charge often means a storm is brewing, and as the camera lingers on her triumphant yet dangerous expression, the audience is reminded that in Genoa City, one person's empowerment is another's downfall, and thus, by the week's end, we are left with Moriah partially unburdened but not entirely free, Sally standing at the edge of ambition's precipice guided and perhaps tested by Jack's counsel, Victor pulling strings behind the scenes with his usual ruthless genius, AUDRA and Holden circling each other like predators, Nick and Sharon pulled back into intimate secrecy, Kane plotting new alliances, and Phyllis staking her claim in a way that could alter the city's balance of power entirely, ensuring that every viewer is perched on the edge of anticipation, waiting for the inevitable collisions that such combustible storylines promise in the episodes to come. Sally's moral quandary, Moriah's confession, and Jack's counsel continue to weave a treacherous tapestry through Genoa City, where every whispered secret, every calculated move, and every lingering glance carries the weight of legacies, reputations, and futures that hang precariously in the balance. And as the tension builds like a storm cloud on the horizon, the characters find themselves cornered by choices that reveal both their vulnerabilities and their hunger for control, beginning once again with Moriah Copeland, whose decision to finally confess comes with a heaviness that drags her down even as she seeks relief, because in opening her mouth to admit what happened, she does not just acknowledge a past wound but exposes herself to judgment, rejection, and perhaps even retribution. Yet the confession she offers is maddeningly incomplete, full of stutters and careful omissions, leaving Sharon, Tessa, and others in the room unsettled and unsatisfied, sensing that something more lurks beneath the surface, that Moriah's carefully chosen words are like shadows obscuring a deeper truth, and as Sharon gently presses her daughter for clarity, Moriah lashes out defensively, her raw nerves exposed, hinting that the mysterious old man she encountered, Michael Swan's character, may have manipulated or triggered her in ways she cannot fully articulate, and while she insists she is not a danger to her family, the quiver in her tone suggests that even she is uncertain whether she can trust herself completely, creating an undercurrent of fear that this secret could detonate later in far more destructive fashion. Meanwhile, Sally Spectra faces her own moral crossroads, one that is less about emotional trauma and more about power, reputation, and the dangerous seduction of ambition. Because with Billy Abbott's increasingly reckless behavior jeopardizing Abbott communications, Sally sees an opening, a chance to secure the influence she has long craved and prove herself as more than just a fiery outsider clawing for scraps, yet to seize it would mean betraying Billy's trust and risking Jack's disappointment. Two men whose approval matters to her more than she admits, and the stakes climb higher when Sally, expecting a lively corporate party, instead walks into an empty, echoing room where Kane Ashby materializes with revelations that strike like a thunderclap, throwing Billy's decisions into sharp, questionable light and forcing Sally to confront whether aligning with Kane, a man with his own checkered past and manipulative tendencies, might be her ticket to ascension or her undoing. And just as Sally teeters between outrage and temptation, Jack Abbott enters the narrative as a steadying force, offering counsel that is both compassionate and cautionary, reminding Sally that the path of ambition is littered with casualties and that power seized in desperation often burns hotter than power earned in patience. But Jack's attempt at mentorship is complicated when an enigmatic message arrives on his phone, a cryptic warning or directive whose origins remain murky, leaving him unsettled and viewers buzzing with speculation over whether Sally, in her desperation, orchestrated the note to manipulate him into nudging her toward leadership, or whether another hand in Genoa City's web of intrigue is playing a more dangerous game. And as Sally weighs her choices under Jack's watchful gaze, elsewhere Claire Grace Newman grapples with the bombshell dropped by her grandfather Victor, who, with his trademark blend of cunning and paternal dominance, pretends to shield Kyle Abbott while in truth sowing doubt in Claire's heart, seeding questions about Kyle's covert dealings that gnaw at her trust and subtly push her into interrogation mode with her lover, a move that highlights Victor's ruthless genius at weaponizing love as a tool for leverage. And even as he destabilizes Kyle and Claire's relationship, Victor sets the stage for a new conflict by ensuring that AUDRA Charles and Holden Novak collide in an explosive war of words and veiled threats, with Holden projecting cool confidence that he will walk away untouched while AUDRA, ever the strategist, sharpens her claws and reveals herself as perhaps the true architect of chaos in this chapter, her every move calculated to entangle others in webs they cannot easily escape. And this looming duel between AUDRA and Holden adds yet another layer of suspense to the week's drama, while in a separate but equally volatile corner of the canvas, PHYLLIS Summers spirals into another cycle of recklessness cloaked as control, her insatiable need to be at the center of the action pushing her toward decisions that alarm even those closest to her, prompting Nick Newman to step in with a stern warning that carries both frustration and genuine concern. Because Nick knows better than anyone that PHYLLIS cannot resist the allure of control but rarely considers the collateral damage of her choices. And in a twist of vulnerability, Nick later confides a secret to Sharon, reviving their complex emotional bond and raising questions about whether their closeness will once again blur the lines of friendship, family, and something more. While Victor, ever the master of unfinished business, ties off long-dangling threads with Michael Baldwin by week's end, settling unresolved matters in a way that signals the start of new machinations even as old ones close, and Kane Ashby, far from remaining a mere catalyst for Sally's turmoil, takes a bold step of his own by forming a new coalition, a move that rattles Billy, intrigues Sally, and potentially reshapes the balance of power in Genoa City's corporate wars. And as all these storylines converge in Friday's climactic crescendo, the spotlight falls once more on PHYLLIS, who, defying Nick's warnings and Jack's doubts, seizes control in a way that leaves jaws dropping, her eyes alight with triumph that borders on mania, and the unanswered question of whether her leadership will usher in order or chaos looms like a dark cloud, reminding viewers that in this world, power is never static but always shifting, one person's rise always mirrored by another's downfall. And as the week concludes, Moriah remains partly unburdened yet still cloaked in mystery. Sally stands poised between loyalty and betrayal under Jack's watchful counsel. Victor manipulates from the shadows with ruthless brilliance. AUDRA and Holden circle each other like predators in a cage match waiting to explode. Nick and Sharon draw closer under the weight of secrets, Kane builds alliances that threaten to redraw battle lines, and PHYLLIS, dangerous in her newfound control, becomes the wild card whose unpredictable next move could either cement her as queen or destroy everything in her grasp, leaving Genoa City teetering on the brink of fresh upheaval and viewers gasping for what comes next. As the dust begins to settle from the week's revelations, the emotional weight of Sally's moral quandary, MORIAH'S confession, and Jack's counsel lingers heavily across Genoa City, seeping into conversations, alliances, and unspoken thoughts. Yet instead of clarity emerging, the opposite takes hold: greater confusion, sharpened suspicions, and a sense that the players in this drama are only beginning to realize how entangled their fates truly are. Because MORIAH, despite confessing enough to rattle her family and prompt Sharon's motherly instinct to go into overdrive, is still visibly haunted, the edges of her truth ragged and incomplete, and those closest to her, Tessa, Sharon, even Faith from a distance, can sense that she has left something unsaid, a detail so potent that she fears releasing it. And this omission gnaws not only at MORIAH but at Sharon, who quietly resolves to uncover what her daughter is holding back, knowing from experience that half-truths only metastasize into bigger crises later, while Sally Spectra, still caught in the throes of ambition and anxiety, finds Jack Abbott's counsel echoing in her mind like both a warning and a dare, because Jack's words about patience, legacy, and the costs of reckless ambition resonate with her longing to prove herself, yet also highlight the danger of letting desperation steer her course. And when she replays Kane Ashby's bombshell revelation in her head, she finds herself questioning whether siding with Kane would be the opportunistic betrayal that Jack cautioned against or the bold leap forward that might finally cement her place as a legitimate player in Genoa City's elite circle. But before she can decide, another enigmatic message surfaces, this one tied directly to Abbott communications, and while Jack initially brushes it off as anonymous mischief, the tone of the message carries a specificity that makes him wonder if Sally is orchestrating more behind the scenes than she admits, even as she insists on her innocence, leaving their mentorship shrouded in mistrust. Meanwhile, Victor Newman sharpens his manipulative hold on Claire Grace by continuing to plant doubts about Kyle Abbott's covert dealings. And though Claire loves Kyle deeply, Victor's carefully chosen words strike her like poison-tipped darts, forcing her to look at her partner through narrowed eyes, probing his stories for inconsistencies, his reassurances for cracks. And while Kyle fights to maintain his composure under the weight of her questions, he cannot help but falter, giving Victor precisely the leverage he wanted, all the while setting the stage for Kyle's precarious downfall. And as if Victor's hand is not heavy enough, his maneuvering indirectly fuels the escalating tension between AUDRA Charles and Holden Novak, whose war of words shifts into a coldly strategic stalemate where each begins plotting the other's destruction in more concrete terms, with AUDRA leveraging her cunning charm to infiltrate Holden's contacts and Holden retaliating by digging into AUDRA's past, both of them so consumed by their duel that they fail to notice Victor watching, quietly amused and ready to exploit whichever one emerges weaker. And as this corporate and personal warfare unfolds, Phyllis Summers escalates her unpredictability, taking control of situations that no one asked her to, meddling in conversations, meetings, and private affairs, justifying each move with a veneer of confidence that convinces only herself. And though Nick Newman tries to rein her in with more warnings, her refusal to listen frustrates him, pushing him closer into Sharon's orbit, where he not only vents his concerns about Phyllis but also shares a secret that weighs on him, a disclosure that complicates his feelings and reignites a spark of intimacy between him and Sharon, much to the likely dismay of others who have long watched their bond shift between friendship and romance. And elsewhere, Kane Ashby's coalition begins to take shape, whispers of partnerships forming in backrooms and boardrooms, the outlines of a power structure designed to challenge Billy Abbott's wavering leadership and perhaps even pull Sally into a position she never imagined, should she dare to embrace the alliance. But the very notion of Kane's return to power sends tremors across town, reminding everyone that Kane is a man who thrives in the gray areas, as comfortable cutting deals in shadows as he is shaking hands in public. And by week's end, all of these threads converge on Phyllis once more, whose decision to seize control, whether in the corporate sphere, her personal life, or both, leaves onlookers stunned, her energy electric, dangerous, and volatile, a reminder that whenever Phyllis places herself at the helm, destruction is only a misstep away. And so as the camera metaphorically pans out over Genoa City,